So welcome everybody to week 3 of February Flare Up Fire Intelligence. Thank you for joining us this week. We're happy to have you. Happy Friday. Karen, I am the research coordinator at Canada Wildfire, and I'm coming to you from Treaty 6 territory. I'd like us all just to take a second to think about the place we live, we work, we play, and the people who have cared for the land for time immemorial. This week, we're going to be taking a step out to a national scale, looking at fire intelligence from the Canadian Forest Service Fire Intelligence and Predictive Services team. So we're going to have Brett Moore with us today. He is the Fire Response Manager out of the Northern Forestry Centre and has been working really hard to stand up a new team and a new unit that's been offering some really great services out to agencies. And I'm really excited to hear more about all of the awesome stuff that's going on there. Brett, welcome. It's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to hearing about this awesome new team over at Northern Forestry Centre.
Well, thanks, Karen. Yeah, no, it was great when we chatted about this a number of months ago to have an opportunity to kind of describe what it is that we're up to. Like Karen said, we're a fairly new team as far as formally. We've been around for about 6 months or so that it's been the True Whips team. And we'll get into a little bit of what we are, and then I'll introduce who we all are. So off the hop, we've been kind of around since, the CFS has been providing support for a number of years. And the kind of more recent history is as 2021 and 2023 were very challenging fire seasons. The CFS had identified a need for a more specific fire support team. And that's where this Wildfire Intelligence and Predictive Services unit is kind of coming out of. So our role so far has been a lot more of the providing some level of support at the more national level, a little bit of that strategic planning, long-term analytics, and some fire growth modeling support. We'll go over kind of the things that we've done in the past and what we're up to now, where our team is looking to go, and what kind of collaboration and innovation we're up to. So what is WIPS? Every time we say this, Indiana Jones seems to come up at some point. I'm sure we'll need to get whip cracks for all of our ringtones before our time is done with this team. But the Canadian Forest Service, as a CIFFC member agency, more broadly, Natural Resources Canada as a CIFFC member agency, has spent a lot of time as providing grants and contributions more than anything. And that has started to evolve into more of this information delivery through structures like the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System and soon Wildland Information Framework. And that's been evolving as fire seasons are becoming more challenging. There's a greater desire for information, both at the federal level and in between provinces. And the CFS has a bit of a role there in ensuring that the messaging federally is consistent with the messaging provincially. And so the Wildfire Intelligence and Predictive Services Unit has found a nice niche assisting in that information flow and ensuring that the story that is being told by the provinces is the same story that is being told at the federal level. We've also moved into a more kind of operational support capability, where I'm sure many of you have experienced some of our fire growth modeling products in previous years. I know a number of folks are using the Canadian Wildfire Information System to look at fire weather index mapping, weather mapping, things of that nature. Richard Carr's weather forecasts. I know that's another thing that a lot of folks have experienced. And that's all a part of this broader WIPS group. The demand for these kinds of resources has really started to increase since 2015. And our best way of really seeing that is through the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System website hits. Now that's both internal and external, so it's a little bit harder to kind of disambiguate, are these agency folks that are needing information? Is it the public that's needing information, or is it folks within the federal government looking for information? But the point is, there's a considerable uptick in utilization of our information tools. So the CWFIS, or Canadian Wildland Fire Information System, is our primary public-facing tool that folks use to kind of gain a bit of an understanding as to what's going on within the fire environment. And from here, we can see, between 2014 and 2023, we went from that 300,000 unique visitors to 4.4 million. And we really see those spikes in difficult fire seasons. 2021, 2023 are both, I'm sure, fresh in everybody's minds. You can also see in the pure information delivered to users. So yeah, 2021 looking at 11 terabytes moved, and 2023 looking at 11 terabytes moved. Our data sets are relatively small, so if we're moving that much information, folks are picking up a lot of the layers that we're providing, which strikes us as a key point to ensure that how we're communicating the information that's on these sites is precise and concise, and that availability continues to exist. It also kind of demonstrated this need for other services. If the mapped products are as useful or available to folks as they are, perhaps there's more that we can do. And this is when we started to get into this more kind of fire intelligence mindset of what else can we be providing agencies, but also the public and our federal overhead. So WIPS within CFS is kind of a 4-branch team. We've got the research and development group, where this is kind of our primary prototyping pool. We have a developer and some analysts that are taking in ideas both from agencies, from other federal partners, and from researchers to take products that are either in a kind of fledgling state or have been published and are looking to be prototyped to test with user groups for operationalization. We're still kind of working out how do we begin to triage all of this information and these tools, but there have been some products to date. We'll go through Firestar, which was originally an Ontario product and is now continuing development within CFS, and a fire behavior briefing sheet that New Brunswick built with us. Then we got the support group, which is the group that I'm managing. We kind of have 3 major buckets of work right now. One in our operational support, so that's strategic planning, long-term analytics, fire growth modeling, in some cases, single resource deployments where appropriate, depending on the training that we have and the need of the agency. That bucket of work so far has looked like a number of incident-specific deployments for remote fire growth modeling, which has allowed us to help groups across Canada. Last year, we were working with Alberta and Newfoundland throughout the season. We're also looking at knowledge exchange and training. And what that's kind of looking like now is ensuring that whatever products we are developing within the CFS WIPS team have a training schedule with them, so that there are manuals to use our tools, courses where appropriate, and availability of specialists to assist in learning how to use these tools. And then we have our broader kind of intelligence side. So we're looking at developing a intelligence dashboard right now. So it's primarily for internal use at the current state, with goals of expanding as we determine who's needing what kind of information and what can we effectively service. Then we have our weather group. Currently, this has been Richard for quite a while now. We're hoping to expand that team over the coming months in order to get Richard the support that he's been needing for a while now. A lot of their responsibility at this time has been providing those CIFFC forecasts that we get each year or each week during the fire season. A lot of the early season forecasting in an effort to kind of prepare the federal overhead for what the potential fire season to come is. And a lot of the kind of long-term forecasting to say, if the current trend persists, what is the rest of the fire season looking like? And our final group is our information unit. They are primarily responsible for a lot of the content development within the CWFIS. They will be doing a lot of the content development that is our public facing side. So ensuring that we have consistent messaging and that we're communicating in consistent way. We also have an emergency management liaison within that group, and they are working with primarily other government departments. So as the fire situation escalates, more units within the federal government are activated, and our information emergency management liaison is ensuring that critical information is moving appropriately between all of those groups. So the support team, there are currently 4 of us. I am Brad Moore. I'm the fire response manager. I have a background in fire growth modeling. I've been doing that for a lot of years now. I do a little bit of application development and looking to develop more intelligence products through some of my coding experience. John Large has recently come on with the team. His focus right now has been a lot more training focused. So he's now our training working group representative. He'll be looking at the ignition course, and he's been helping out with some of the fire behavior courses as well. Rachel Dietrich is also new to the team. She'll be looking at some of the fire intelligence product development, and is more on that forest ecology side and looking to do more work with the data that we're wrangling. That's assuming we don't get her some exports so she can go and be a fire observer or an FBAN or what have you. And Sam Lacarte, he's the fellow that if you've interacted with anybody within the WIPS team in the last little while, it's probably Sam. I managed to take my parental leaves in both 2021 and 2023 and left Sam on his own to do all the fire modeling support through those summers. So he's been an instrumental part of our fire modeling support system, as well as developing our national fuels layer and ensuring that it's staying up to date and doing a lot of liaising within the agencies to ensure that folks are getting the products that they need. So to date, we've been kind of all over the place in what we've been up to. A lot of it has been our fire modeling support and trying to find, I guess, new and better ways to support agencies when they are in a time of need for fire modeling backup. A lot of that has has fleshed out as running Prometheus to do some long-term and short-term modeling. But as the Firestar system continues to develop, we're looking to move more towards these probabilistic systems to provide a more strategic outlook on what's going on with fire for agencies. There's been a lot of collaboration within this team, especially in terms of structures like our fuel mapping process. We have a little bit more on that later. Building more on our fire modeling side. So one of the tools we'll talk about is the Wildfire modeling framework in an effort to kind of make fire modeling more accessible and less onerous. And then we're starting to integrate more with training. So I am getting more involved with the fire behavior specialist courses. John's more involved with the ignition courses, and all of these things are going to allow us to work with the folks that are developing training for things like CFFDRS 2025. What are they wanting to ensure is getting out to the agencies? When we have direct communications with the agencies, we can continue those conversations on a more regular basis and make sure that what messaging they want getting out is getting out at the rate that they're hoping for. So our one of our big kind of spots that we can be helpful is in the agency collaboration. I worked with Alberta for a number of years, 11 years, something like that. Sam was with Ontario for a long time, and John and Rachel both come from parks. So we're really leveraging the relationships that we have with operational fire management agencies to continue working with those folks with a focus on how can the things that we're doing help the day-to-day operations on the ground go better and feel smooth. So there's a lot of research that's being done, and then it's a matter of getting that research out to the agencies. So, you know, a study gets produced, and there's a hope that there's a bunch of uptake and it's being read. And if there's anything that we've heard more than anything else, it's that folks are really busy and reading papers and then sorting out how am I going to take that paper and turn it into action. And then now that I've got an action, who am I going to get to do this work? It breaks up this cycle many times of I can't operationalize it. I don't have the capacity to do it. I haven't interpreted it correctly, and now it's not going quite right, and that's resulting in a poor implementation. Our goal is to be able to come and spend some time with the agencies doing this kind of liaising work of, I would like to see us spending time a week in an operations center while it's active, so that we can see how your work is going and show the tools that we have at our disposal that may be able to help you. If we've learned anything through how the CFFDRS was originally implemented by the agencies, it wasn't just a paper thrown on a desk and said, all right, here you go, system's ready, implement as you see fit. There were folks shoulder to shoulder, crushing through, building it into their computer systems, watching it fail, understanding how it's changing decision structures, and spending that time together working on getting new tools implemented. So what I'm suggesting within our group is that we'd be able to, if you're interested in something like Firestar, we can come and spend a week or more in agency and work with you on seeing this is how Firestar could be working on your landscape. this is what it's meaning. This is how we're using the tool nationally. Does this fit the needs that you have? And if it doesn't, what would? What kind of changes can we make to provide a better product for you? One of the great examples of that is our fuel layer within New Brunswick. Nationally, the fuel layer is created, and it's using a number of kind of wall-to-wall data layers, species, tree height, things of that nature, and it creates a pretty generic map. And anybody out of any of the agencies will look at it and go, "Well, that's not my fuels. That's not how this is going to work on my landscape. I can't use that national layer." And we get that. And this is an opportunity to have a chat with us and say, hold on, there's a whole bunch of this landscape on the national layer that just isn't right. But we at the province or territory have the information to make that a better layer. We're more than happy to take into account things that are going on at the local scale, so that we can represent your fuels nationally as you would see them at the agency level. This also really helps us when we're starting to do our fire growth modeling. We don't want to be running on a grid that you don't have confidence in. So whatever we can do with the information that you already have to make that national layer more representative of what you know to be on the ground, we're more than happy to incorporate that and ensure that what we're seeing nationally is what you're seeing locally. With the government of New Brunswick, they were needing a fire briefing report. So over the last year and a bit, there has been a bunch of work done in collaboration with the New Brunswick government to find a way to build them a tool where effectively they will select weather stations that they're interested in for a day, and then tell it to generate a report, and it'll build this fire weather behavior briefing for them. And this is very similar to what a number of agencies would see when you're doing your daily preparedness. This was just an opportunity to give one of the partners information that we already had kind of at our disposal, a better format. It's also leveraging their fire weather information from their stations. So it's not like this is stuff that's off of just ECCC information. It's directly out of the New Brunswick data pools. Firestar. So this is, I guess, relatively new, as it was brought on in Ontario prior to 2023. That was after Jordan had come over to CFS and was doing some work over here. But Ontario had their Firestar system up and running to provide probabilistic fire growth mapping. And it would give them reports in order to suggest, these are the potential challenges that you'll see over the coming days. When Jordan had come over to the CFS, then as computers kind of ticked on, Ontario's system started to break down on them, and we were in a position to be able to support bringing their system back up. And then as we were looking at the tool itself, we kind of said, well, if this is working within Ontario, can we push this to the national scale? So currently we have some national level experimental outputs that are giving us a much better, or I guess better is a bad term, a different outlook on what fire spread could look like for individual fires within Canada. And it's currently leveraging structures like our Fire M3 product in order to take aggregate fire locations and simulate fire for all of them across Canada. The development is ongoing, so this is one of those big opportunities where as we start working with agencies and saying, hey, this is a product that we can provide now, it's a chance to have that feedback cycle and say, would this work for you? What would work better? How do we make this a product that you can utilize within your agency? And we have a lot of opportunity to make those updates and utilize them for the whole country. One of the products that I'm a part of is developing this Canadian wildland fire modeling framework. And our goal there is to be able to have a number of disparate inputs get sent through a system and provide effectively an input packet that would be going to a fire model of your desire. So initially we had targeted a couple of fire growth models, but due to some of the politics around those models, we're kind of down to Firestar for right now. So the development on this isn't super active, but we're still looking at how do we get this to a point where folks are able to plug in some other fire growth model and be able to very rapidly pick forecasts from either their agency or Environment Canada, or in some cases ECMWF, depending on what we can get off the internet, and different fuel layers and different elevation layers. And it takes the data management side of the problem out of it for folks. So you can just kind of identify, this is where I want to run a model, this is how I want to run that model, and it'll build the kind of building blocks for you to be able to do that. Yeah, you can stay tuned on that one. So what's next? We got some operational fire support in the fire season on the books of being ready to support as needed remotely for fire growth modeling or strategic analytics. But we can also do some of that work in person. If it makes sense to have us out to assist with long-term analytics at the area level, or bringing us out to better understand the kind of tools that we are developing during a kind of moderate fire load. We're also looking a lot at partners with prolific prescribed fire programs, getting out to prescribed fires to monitor and measure what's going on during those fires. It's all opportunities to feed information back into the fire behavior prediction system. Our development of fire modeling tools is kind of going to be a never-ending cycle of ensuring that those tools are continuing to provide better information and utilizing the kind of newest, latest, greatest as much as possible. And inside of that, making sure that we have training that's appropriate to the user levels that are using those tools. Through my time with the fire behavior specialist course, there's a very clear delineation between operationally useful and strategically useful, and building training to kind of dissect each of those and kind of bisect it to ensure that we're training the folks that need to know each of those layers to the fullest extent that we can. And of course, continued agency collaboration. We're really hoping that we can spend some time out in each of the agencies and learn a little bit more about each of the nuances. So the kind of Canada one size fits all doesn't feel like it's Canada one size fits all. We're going to make sure that a nationally available tool has agency specific kind of bent to it to ensure that the products that you're getting are actually useful, and it's not just doing math for math's sake. And it's really helping those of us that are looking at the left get the information from those of you that are looking at the right. We spend a lot of our time looking kind of broadly at what we can see from space, but you folks are on the ground and have the real information and are able to assist us in making good modeling decisions and providing the outputs that you're looking for. So, and I also am in the process of getting us a nice clean email that isn't incredibly long. So that email at the bottom there will be active in the coming weeks here, and we'll be able to provide support from that that common location. I think that's what I've got for today.
Thanks, Brett. It's great to hear about all the stuff that's going on. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but if anyone would like to put any questions in there, feel free. I can read them anonymously. Or if you would like, you can raise your hand and unmute, turn on your video and ask your question. Please just note that that will mean that you will be in the recording for the session. So I have a question regarding, and I'm going to do my best not to use acronyms and guess that I have these correct. So the Canadian Wildfire Modeling Framework, is that similar or related to WISE or the Wildfire Intelligence Simulation Engine?
Sort of. So I guess it would kind of sit above the Wildfire Intelligence and Simulation Engine. That program, WISE, is a fire modeling endpoint. So the CWFMF would be feeding into WISE. As I completely obliterate your ability or your desire to move away from acronyms using only acronyms.
No, it's perfect. I just wanted to introduce the actual words in case people wanted to look it up, and hopefully I used the right one. Okay, so somewhat related. Got it. Did you want to add anything before I go on to my next?
I don't think so. It's effectively an activator is kind of the way to think about it. So when you're using some kind of a graphic user interface and you're plugging information into it, the goal is to be able to have where am I sending this? Am I sending it to Firestar? Am I sending it to WISE? Am I sending it somewhere else? The goal is to have kind of this open, well, it's an open API structure application program interface to allow individuals with a fire model to send out hooks to the Canadian Wildland Fire Information Framework or modeling framework to allow it to talk to it.
Okay, and so how is that accessible? Like, is it open access? Anyone, the public can pop in, or do you need to have agency email? How do people find and use the tool?
That tool, well, that tool doesn't exist yet. The goal is for it to be publicly available. We're developing it on GitHub, so it'll be fully open source so that folks can stand it up for themselves. But there will also be a centralized offering that will develop the input packet, but would not necessarily do the fire growth modeling, as that's a bunch of processor time that if we're hosting that centrally, you can imagine the processing bill gets real big, real fast.
Yeah, fair enough. Really, that's really exciting. I did have a question sent to me. So, and it's actually the next question I had, which is, how can people access training, modeling tools and services? What is their best bet to be able to reach out, and who specifically? Or like, you have this generic email that will eventually become a thing, but is there a different process for someone from an agency versus maybe a community group to be able to get support?
Yeah. Currently, we don't have a cleaner process for agency versus community versus kind of anybody else. Worst case, you can email me directly. Probably better case is to go through our generic so that we can get it over to the appropriate group within our broader structure. Yeah, and I think once this is done and the generic email is up, I'll send a note over to Karen to send a note out to all of the participants that says, hey, the generic is up. But I'll also have my email on there for folks if you need to get in touch with me with anything in particular. And that's kind of the case with the training and modeling support. That's kind of a, as need, fire us a note and we can see what we can set you up with. Hopefully, for the most part, we'll be able to sit down and chat with you for a little while and work through any of the issues. But the goal is to also have manuals available as they're kind of finalized on our website on the CWFIS.
Thanks, Brett. If any of your team is brave enough, feel free to drop your email address in the chat for people. I think we have a wonderful group here, so I wouldn't worry too much about giving it out. So you talked a lot about agency support, supporting provinces and territorial governments. Are the same resources and supports available to, for example, like an Indigenous community operating on federal land, but being responsible for fire management and response within that area?
I mean, I think so. I don't see why not. It's when it comes to longer term kind of deployments for us, those have traditionally been CIFFC requests, but I don't see a reason for us to not at least have a conversation with Indigenous communities if they're in a position that they're requiring some modeling support or wanting to look at some of the analytics on the landscape. I think we can work with them on that.
Thanks, Brett. And thanks, Sam and Brett, for putting your email addresses in there. So I know this is exciting and relatively new, being able to be a CIFFC requested and deployable resource. So I just wanted to mention that again. I'm sure most of our partners that are here and the agencies and the territories and provincial agencies would know, but something to note that the resource is available and you would go through your normal CIFFC channel to request that resource. Brett, did you want to bring your team on at all to introduce themselves, or do you want me to keep on going with questions?
I mean, we could, a little bit. I guess it'll depend on how Sam's feeling. I know he's been a little under the weather here. But yeah, Sam and John, if you want to fire on some cameras and folks could put a moving face to the static name.
Yeah, especially because it's a really neat circumstance where you're a remote unit.
Yes.
So much of the federal government now has been recalled and is, all butts and chairs down the hallway. And this is a neat unit that's spread out across the country. And so I think it'd be great for people to be able to put a face to a name. Sorry, I'm putting you all on the spot. Even if you just wave, that would be wonderful so people can know.
You're putting me on the spot, Karen. I'm still trying to figure out how to use Zoom. So,
Hi, John.
Hi there. Nice to see some familiar faces and a couple names blast from the past here. So, I'm happy to be part of this group. Brett did a great job presenting what we're trying to get set up here, and looking forward to working with people in the future.
Thanks, John. Rachel, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, echo what John said, I guess, but nice to meet everyone or see everyone on as well, and excited to continue to work with some new agencies this summer. Hopefully we can provide support.
Thanks. And Sam, if you don't want to, you can just say hello in the chat. That is fair. I'm just happy that you joined us, even if you're not feeling well.
Seems like his camera's not playing nice with him today.
That's all right. I think many people here have interacted with Sam. He's done a fair amount of work, including helping out when we ran an Insert Strategic Network training program in Edmonton, tagged on to the Wildfire Canada conference in, what was that, 2024. So I think quite a few people, would be, as he notes, people have seen enough of him. So Sam, everybody. We did have a question come in. Are you able to provide an update on Firehawk?
Sort of, kind of, not really. Development's still underway. It has been accessing the products that are coming out of Firestar, but some of the kind of deliverable desires aren't quite in place yet. But if you're looking for a really detailed update on that, there, Cordy, John Boucher would be your point of contact there, and I'll snag his email and throw it in here for you.
Awesome, thanks, Brett. I'll give you a second to do that. While you're working on that, I have a question, and it can go to anyone on the team. But looking forward over the next 1, 2, 3 years, can you share what your top priorities would be for where the program will go, new services that might be available, or things that you, how am I supposed to word this? Ways that you would solicit feedback from your clients or the agencies for how they would like to see the program move forward. Do you have any thoughts, ideas, things to share there?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we're looking at developing here in this fire season is a consistent request method. To date, it's been very ad hoc of either we see something that's kind of going on the landscape, and then we'll phone the folks that we know that are in the area and just kind of ask, like, how are things going? What's happening out there for you right now? Or it'll go the other way, where somebody who knows what we have been able to do in the past reaches out because they're in a position where they need some additional support. And they're like, hey, I know you can do this. Are you available to come and help? What we want to have is that can continue for sure, but we're also trying to find a more, I guess, formal. It feels like a bad term because formalization always feels like, oh, now there's a bunch of bureaucracy in the way. The goal, though, is more to just give folks an idea of what kind of services can we actually provide, and what are you looking for, so that we can have the person that's able to deliver that to you in contact with you as quick as possible. So, is it fire modeling support? Is it long-term analytics that you're after? Is it some kind of prototyping question where you've got an idea of a product that you would love to have within your agency, but there's not any capacity to build it, and it might be something that would work nationally at some point, but right now you just want to see if it works locally. Those are the kinds of things that we want to have in our kind of like request structure. It also gives us a little bit more of that vertical planning, so that we can show our management, like, these are the things that are being requested. This is the kind of stuff that we can actually service. And these are the broader questions that agencies have generally that kind of come up in a more ad hoc way than doing a formal engagement session where it's like, all right, it's November after a terrible fire season. What did you wish you had this year? It's like, well, I don't remember. It was a bad fire season. I thought about it in June and now it's gone. This will be more of a method to allow folks to log those desires as they come up.
So on that note, Brett, and I may be putting you on the spot here, I know a couple months ago when we originally talked about doing this session, one of the things that you floated as an idea was using it as an opportunity to try to get some feedback or to solicit some information from the agencies. If you're interested, feel free to ask any of those questions, and people can maybe post your answers in the chat box. We could also, if it works best, provide the questions out to the attendees after, and create like a form or something that you can get direct feedback from if that's something that you're interested in. And anyone who's on this call still, feel free to dump. Brett just gave you an open door to dump all of all of your requests and all of your wishes into the chat box. And yeah, so feel free to put stuff in there. I think you nailed it, that it's not a one size Canada or Canada one size fits all. We know it's such a diverse country with landscapes and ecosystems and resources and needs. So I think it's really great and important that your group is taking that to heart into the program and realizing that it's not going to be a one size fits all. And I think it's really wonderful that you have a group with history and relationships and networks from different groups within Canada. Because as we know, it's people at the heart of everything, right? So that's awesome. I'm going to ask again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat box. Oh, one just popped in. And I will do my best to read them out. You're also still welcome to unmute and ask them yourself if you would like. So there's interest in trying to get the national fuel layer modeling to represent the effect of fuel treatments and mitigation at larger landscape scales if you're collecting a wish list.
Yeah, that's an interesting and challenging one. It can probably be done through some of that agency level collaboration, where if there are known zones that have been modified and there's a desired from to, as it were, to say, okay, this was C2, it's now better represented by D2. We can probably do some of that to show that at a larger scale. How that looks at the national level is interesting. We do have multiple layers now that are available. The most recent published version is a little bit old at this point, but I know Sam is working on getting a 2025 layer up and rolling here. I believe before the fire season. I'll put him on the spot that way of being like, hey, congratulations, you've got 15, well, not even 9 days to get it ready for Alberta, but 39 days for everybody else.
Yeah, that early season start. Sam did put in the chat that he's always looking for more insight, assistance, critique, and feedback on the national fuel layer, and be happy to chat at any time. It's a huge challenge, and we need to do better and more on fuels across the country. One thing that always comes to my mind with fuels is the temporal scale of when the fuel layer is from. And something that I've always thought of, although I know there's already a million things to do when it comes to the fuel layer, is whether or not there would be the option to add in almost like a timeline condition. So when you have, for example, fuel conversion due to a fuel treatment and you convert, like you said, C2 to D2, could it be worked into the public facing or the agency facing model or fuel layer where people can see when that occurred and maybe a prompt that an update is needed or verification is needed after a set time window? And I say that from having a short agency background, but also from a research context. It'd be really great as a researcher or a grad student starting out to be able to look and be like, hey, this is where the need is for fuel layer updates. And then it would give you a great in to be able to work collaboratively with the agency.
Can you hear me,
I can, Brad, are you trying to ask a question or should I?
No, sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'm just gonna mute you. Yeah, so is that something that could maybe be integrated into the federal layer, or is it too big of an ask on top of all of the other asks with regards to fuel?
I'm not sure, and I say that only because I'm thinking about it as is that almost like a step too far at the federal level, because that feels very agency specific. At what point are we able to be providing support for doing some of this work? I think there's maybe opportunity to develop a layer that just shows for the agencies that are desiring to produce a layer that says, okay, here are all the years from which our fuel information is from, so that somebody can look at that and go, oh man, this stuff is 20 years old, whereas this stuff is 5 years old. If I'm going to be doing a fuels study, maybe I should go to these zones that are 20 years old. I could see something like that being viable. Yeah, that's a better answer. Thanks, Sam. Short answer, yes. Long answer, one person on it. So it's big. Our contacts with F-bands across the country is super helpful in better understanding where there are discrepancies in the national layer to ensure that we're having the conversations with the folks that are directly impacted by the layer that we're providing, and ensuring that we're not lying to you right to your face, and getting the best data in front of you possible.
Yeah, fair enough. And I get it, Sam. It's a huge ask. I think Brett's idea of being able to have a timestamp of when that layer was generated might be a good solution, although there's a lot of inherent issues with that as well, potentially. So it would, and maybe it is an agency thing. Maybe it'd be really interesting for agencies to have a grid of areas, and maybe they already have it, areas of highest priority for reclassification or verification that could be openly available and shared with the research community. So there's always great opportunities for collaboration and leveraging there as well.
And I think it's like the fuel treatment comment of earlier, right? Like there's known modifications on the landscape. How do we ensure that those are reflected at the national level? Because we're not always seeing them through the wall-to-wall data.
Yeah, and we're learning too that as climate and weather change, our fuel layers are maybe not particularly representative, especially in some of the northern areas that were frozen or permafrost. And then you have, a couple of years of drought and extremely warm weather, and all of a sudden you have an active fuel layer available. So it's a hard spot to be in. I think we can strive to get the best fuel layer possible, but it's also a snapshot at one point in time. And I think maybe just acknowledging the confidence in that data might be something that's valuable. I think the people who work in it all the time, your F-bands and people like U5 and our agency staff, they understand it, but I think that the public for sure might not. And it's something that kind of flags in my mind if it's going to be a public facing where they can go in and run models. There might be a need to state the confidence around those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. I think something else worth mentioning with how our group is functioning is that we're not here to try to take over the work of any of the other predictive services units. We're here more as a supplemental resource. So if you're in a position where you're needing to time groups out for a spell in order to keep your predictive services at full force, that's where we're available to pop in for the time that you need to do that Timex, and then get your folks back up, with the goal of just having a kind of consistent overlap for you, so that you're not getting constantly overrun by fatigue, ideally.
Thanks, Brett. I think that's a great clarification. And I think it is a resource that a lot of the agencies will really appreciate, especially once the relationship is built and they can see all the great things that your team can do. So I think I'm going to do a last call for questions. So if anyone has anything they'd like to either unmute or put into the chat, we'll give you another minute or two to do it. If not, I'm going to hand it over to Brett's team if they have any last minute things to say, and then we'll potentially end a little early today and give people a little bit of time back in their schedules, because I know everyone is crunched for time.
And I think we will send out some kind of like a questionnaire after the fact, because I am curious about a couple of things. But the one question that I have for folks to think about, you don't have to answer now, but send one of us a note at some point. Are you using national layers? And if you're using national layers, which ones are you using? And is there a national layer that you wish you had that you don't? And that we can start looking at how do we collect that information responsibly in an effort to display it appropriately. I'll write it as well, because that's a lot of words.
Thanks, Brett. We can definitely facilitate sending that out. We'll try to get it together within the next few days, if that works, Brett. And then we'll send it out when we let everyone know that the recording is up on YouTube, if that works. And we'll include a announcement for next week's session, which will be with Jonathan Reimer, and we'll be looking at fire intelligence from the critical decision maker and the psychology of making good decisions under pressure. Okay, you put in the chat, I see it there. That's awesome. Yeah, I think those are great questions. I have one more question, and then if nothing else comes in, I think we'll call it a day here. But my question is there any intention to eventually merge some of the work around fire simulation and the smoke forecasting? And I'm not thinking from community, I'm thinking from firefighter and IMT health perspective. So we can take the big picture of health and safety into context when moving crews around, selecting command center locations, things like that, or even with regards to planning evacuation routes.
From the perspective of simulation coupling or information delivery, or both?
I think information delivery, it could be both. I guess I was thinking more from information delivery, if there'd be a way to have them as like two products that could be supplemental to each other with perhaps separate interpretations, but maybe a compounding or interpretation as well from a safety perspective.
It hadn't been something that was in the docket thus far, but I think that is a really valuable piece of interpretation that we can absolutely be doing, just because of the scale that we're looking at things, right? When we're looking at it nationally, it's a lot easier to have that conversation of here's where the smoke is coming from and here's where it will likely go. My first comment was a little bit of a softball to myself in that we are currently working on a method to incorporate the fire modeling outputs in the smoke output modeling, because right now the smoke is being generated purely by what is collected via satellite. So if we've got hotspots, those are the points in space that are generating smoke to be transited across space. It'd be interesting to have the ability to say, okay, if the perimeter got to X size in 2 days, how much additional smoke is being potentially produced?
Thanks, Brett. And there's a good note in the chat too. It would depend on the sophistication of the smoke model. And there is access to Blue Sky and firesmoke.ca, which are great publicly available tools right now. So thanks for noting that, Brian. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. I'm going to give you one last chance for the WIPS team to provide any comments or closing ideas, suggestions, and then we will wrap up the session.
Anything from you, team?
Nothing to add from me, but just excited to hopefully work with lots of new agencies this summer and this fall as far as season never ends.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is, Brett mentioned that we came on recently. Well, we came on in October, so it's been Brett and Sam leading the charge up until now. So we haven't actually gone through an operational season, so it's kind of exciting times. There's a lot of unknowns, but that also means lots of possibilities. So stay tuned.
Thanks, John. We won't make Sam talk because he doesn't have a voice. Brett, do you have any last comments?
Only that we all keep saying stay tuned, and we're starting to get to a point where the generation won't understand what that means. It's this weird demarcation of like, oh, I'm old now. DCRs are a fun one.
Yes. I also have tiny humans that don't get my references.
Yep. What am I staying tuned to?
I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I'd like to give an extra special thank you to the WIPS team for coming on today and sharing this relatively new endeavor. And I think it was really good to note, John, that it's been since October. So it's the amount, I know you say stay tuned and that there's a lot of stuff forthcoming, but the amount of thought and work that's already been done, I think is quite commendable within that short time frame. So give yourself grace and patience. And I think everyone understands that these big systematic projects and changes do take time, especially when run within a government structure with a emergency response season to it. So yeah, great work coming out of your group and exciting new things down the pipeline. I'm excited to see what happens in the coming seasons and some of the new products that come out. And I hope that we can continue to keep in touch. If you have new updates and new things, we'd love to help share them. We will do our best to share your questions, Brett, and get some feedback, hopefully, from the people who attended today. And if you're interested, we could even share it more broadly. We can talk about that later. So thank you everyone for coming. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. And we hope to see you next week for week 4 February Flare Up with Jonathan Reimer looking at decision making. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.